Okay, let's begin with the Chazara. We have on Daf Beis, we began with a mission with 4 halachas. We already discussed. The first halacha was the maximum share of 20 amas, the minimum share of 10 tvachim, the 3 walls, and the you need still some chavasa. The Daf Beis, we discussed the 3 reasons why 20 amas is a puzzle. Daf Gimel, we discussed 2 machlekes in Misham Beisilo, mitzvah Sukka Gedela and Sukka Katana, and we discussed the 10 halachas pertaining to an area that's 4x4. Daf Dalid, we got into, I forgot already. Daf Dalid was the 8 cases that were said over in Rav Ashi's Beis Medrash, and a dinam of the height of the sukkah. And we got introduced to Dev and Akuma, Lavud, and Godasik. And then in Dalad Beis, we discussed the tefach, or the amma, of Rabbi Yaakov, and his dimundin that will work for your sukkah. Daf Hey, we moved on to the minimum size of a sukkah being 10 tvachim, and we brought 3 sources for 10 tvachim. The last one being Allah Moshe Sinai, and we got into shiur and chatzitzin and mechitzas, which was the vav, the halachas of shiurin, the different shiurim we mentioned within the smachta from the pasuk of chita sa'ira, the din of chatzitzin of ruba yom akbid midayraisa, and the halachas of mechitza, which include 10 tvachim according to Reb Meir, and both good asik and gorachis lavud and devanakuma. When we got to machlekes between Reb Shimon and the chacham, whether the minimum size of the sukkah is 3 walls plus a tefach or 2 walls plus a tefach. Yesterday we discussed where do you put that tefach. We had 4 different options of where the tefach goes and how that tefach is made, plus an option for a mavui mefulish. If you have a mavui that is open at 2 ends and you're putting a tefach where that tefach has to go, we saw a chumah there has to actually be 4 tvachim. And then Rava's halacha, 3 halachas that something that works for Shabbos will work for Sukkah, and something that works for Sukkah will work for Shabbos on Shabbos. And then we brought in whether the defanas also need to be tzilsim ruv mechavasta. We brought Shita Rav Yosha. And then the Gemara brought 8 amarayim that hold of some idea of diras keva b'ina. That for some reason, on some level, they hold you need diras keva. Okay, that brings us to the bottom of Zayin Beis. The last halacha that we learned was about Achirim, who said that a round sukkah is puzzle. Comes along Rabbi Yochanan right on top of the circle. Rabbi Yochanan, sukkah asuya kekivsha, a sukkah that is built like an oven, which is round, Rashi says. So he says as follows: you need to be able, it needs to have a certain size. There's a minimum size for that square, that circle. And he says that is if you'll have in that sukkah, you're able to fit 24 people in the circumference. Be'kefa means the circumference. You can fit 24 people in the circumference of that circle, then the sukkah is okay. So the Gemara wants to know, why do you need such a large sukkah, 24 people? So the Gemara is going to say that as well. So the maximum size for the minimum size of the sukkah that we learned so far was Rebbe, who said it has to be 4 amos by 4 amos. Okay. So says the Gemara, come on, who is Rebbe Yochanan going like? Rebbe, the Amar Kol Sukkah she'en ba 4 amos el 4 amos besula. So the only person it could be going is like Rebbe. But let's see, Michti. Let's see. Gavr ba'amsa yosef. A person will take up the space of an amma. So now here's our first formula. Here's our first formula for circumference. Okay? What is kol sheish be'kefa shleisha? Any circle, this has a circumference of 3 tefachim. Yesh b'reichav tefach has a diameter of 1 tefach. Okay, so that's kamat pi. My pi is 3.14. The circumference is pi d, right? Pi times diameter, 3.14 times the diameter gives you the circumference. That means the circumference equals the circumference is pi d. So that's the What? 3. Yeah. So that's the Gemara. It's interesting. Rashi brings a source for this. Where did Chazal get this from? That we, every a tefach of a diameter is 3 tefachim in a circumference. I guess you can measure it, but it actually brings a source of the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim Beis. Take a look at the Rashi to the side, but Amsa Yosef in the middle. He says, "B'yam sha'asa shloima." Remember, he's so big. This built this very big a basin. Yeah, and it was Eser ba'ama misvasei al svasei. It was 10 amas from one edge to the other. Agol Savin. And it went the Kab Shleishim Ba'ama Yisavah, and you were able to take a string of 30 amas and encircle it. So you see there, those are the proportions: 10 amas across and 30 amas around. I think some say that the reason that we need a source for it to tell you, yet even though it's a little bit off, because pi is 3.14, right? So the pasuk is telling you don't have to be worried about the 0.14. You don't have to because Chazal only didn't deal with the fraction. Even though we'll see soon they do deal with fractions, but by in this formula they didn't. I think I remember seeing once someone said that's why Rashi brought the source. That's like you don't go to the now, okay. So what? So now Lamaisa, if that's the formula, Yeshu Rechav Tefach. So then B'Treiser Sagi. So then if you have a sukkah, which you need to be 4 by 4. So we're saying, okay, this is the diameter is 4. So then a circumference of 12, which would mean 12 people would be enough. That's half the size. So what's Rabbi Yochanan saying? You need 24, a circumference of 24 people, 24 amas. That's ridiculous. So the Gemara says, wait. You're off a little bit here. Hani mili beigula, aval beribua ba'itfei. Meaning, the Gemara is going to explain. Michti. Kama meruba yoser al ha'igul. How much larger is a square than a circle? That means if you what?
What condition? How large the area?
Yeah.
If circle have diameter for 10 amas.
Yeah.
And the sphere has one side is 4 amas, right? So the perimeter is 16 amas, and the perimeter of circle is 30 amas.
Exactly. So that's a question the Gemara is going to make. So Gemara is going to say, "Hanimil bigula b'ruba b'yitvei." I mean, if michti kama meruba yoser ala eagle. So the Gemara says it's a ravia. It's a quarter more. So then b'shitzar sagi. So then that should be enough to have a circumference of 16. Should be enough. So the Gemara says, 1 second, Hanimili be eagled enough like migavibua. That's if you're putting a circle inside the square. Aval ribua denavik migavigula. If you're putting a square in a circle, then ba'itfei. Meaning, we want that you should be able to have a sukkah of daled by daled inside a circle. Meaning your circle needs to fit a square of 4 by 4. Okay, so if I have a square of 4 by 4, what is going to be the size of the sukkah that can go around the square? So you have to figure out what is the diagonal of your square that's 4 by 4. Okay, so that is is what size? So that's a squared plus b squared equals c. That's what I learned. The Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
The diameter is square root of 2.
Exactly. By the side of the wall. Yeah, that's a new way to do it. I saw that online.
Square root of 2 is 1.4.
Exactly, and that's exactly what the Gemara is going to say. Says the Gemara, Mishum Murshadakanis. I mean, you need extra space if you're putting a circle around the square, so you can have the corners, which need extra space. So that's our second formula the Gemara tells us. Kol amsa, every amma biribua, in a square, which means the hypotenuse or the diagonal is amsa v'treichum shibalachsoina. So if you have an amma, a square amma is going to have a diagonal of 1 2/5. That's ba'alachsoina is the diagonal. 1 2/5. That's 1.4. Oh, so says the Gemara. So now if I have now if my diameter is 1 and it's more because it's going to be our sukkah again is 4 by 4. So if it's 4 by 4, your diagonal is going to be it's going to be less than that. It's 5, a little bit less. So that's what the Gemara is going to say. It's a little bit less. It's going to be if we're going with 1 2/5, so it's going to be 5 3/5.
No, not 5
3/5. 5 point. What is that? 5.6. So the Gemara says. So then we have b'shiv sar naki chumshi sagi in 16 and 4/5. That's 17 minus a fifth. Sagi, that should be enough. Right? A little less than 17. A little less than 17. That should be enough. Not going with pi. Again, if our it's a little less than pi. We're not going with pi, so it's a little less. So now says the Gemara. Okay, so so if we're putting a square that's 4 by 4, and inside a circle, the circle circumference is going to be a little less than 17. So still, Rabbi Yaakov said 20. Rabbi Yochanan said 24. So it says the Gemara, Loidak. Okay, he wasn't so meduyik. He approximated. Affects the Gemara. When can you say someone approximated? That's porta. That's not a little bit, but tuva on such a large discrepancy. Can you say that he wasn't dark? No, but he says that you need a circumference of 24. Yeah. Says the Gemara. Okay. Amr le Markashisha Breder of Chizda le Ravashi. So Markashisha Breder of Chizda, he says this. Listen, you made an assumption when Rabbi Yochanan said 24 people have to be able to sit on the perimeter, on the circumference. Your assumption was that 24 people take up 24 amas. No. That means every person takes up an amma. Do you think that a person takes up an amma? Tlosa gavri betarti amsa yasvi. 3 people can fit in 2 amas. Okay? Which would mean that you only need 16 amas to go around. Okay, we're much closer now. So the Gemara says, so kamahavilu shitzar. So then that means you need a sukkah that can fit 16. Anan shivsar nakichumsha be'inan. But according to our cheshbon said that you need to be able, your circumference needs to be 16 and 4/5. So that means you're off by 4/5. So Mar says, Laidak. Okay, so if Yochanan wasn't being, he was approximating, that's a porta, that's a little bit. Yeah. But when can you say that you weren't specific? That's l'chumra. But l'kula mi'amrina leidak, you can't say l'kula again. What we require would be 16 and 4/5, and Rabbi Yochanan is saying you only need 16. So he's saying leidak, yeah, but that's l'kula. You're going to end up sitting in a sukkah that's too small. So we're stuck. Why in the world Rabbi Yochanan gave this huge shear of 24 people, 20 in the circumference, and nobody has such a big shear? Let's go back to our original premise. A person takes up an amma. Rabbi Yochanan makam gavri loy kachashiv. You were assuming that Rabbi Yochanan, when he said 24 people, he meant 24. He meant that 24 people were outside the circle, were inside. 24 people, he had a circle around them. Right? That would be 24 amas. Right? We're saying no. We're talking about that the circle is in front of them. Draw a circle in front of the 24 people. So that means you're subtracting a amma from each side. Right? So if if we have a circle that's 24 amas, so the diameter is going to be 8. Right? That's if the circle. If you made the circle, let's say around the people, but if you make the circle in front of them, right? So the circle is small. How much smaller is it? Well, it's going to take minus from the diameter. You minus an amma from each side, because the people now are. It's really the opposite. Meaning, if the person takes up an amma, so we're saying it's 20.
3.5 amma.
One second. If the circle, if we need a circle of 24 people. Okay, so I got circle. Now I can draw that circle in two places, right? Either in front of the people or behind the people. And the difference between that, in diameter-wise, the diameter from person to person, from the front of the person to the other person, is going to be, let's say, is 6 amas. From their backs to the other guy's back is going to be 8 amas, because the person takes up an amma, right? So if we're not counting the people, so then you're going to be less 2 amas, one from each. So that means my circumference is 6. If my circumference is 6, I'm sorry, my diameter is 6. That means my circumference is going to be 18. Oh, okay. 18 is not so bad. Says the Gemara. So says Kama Havalu. So what's our circumference now? Our circumference now is Timnisri, is 18. And Bishivsar Naki Chumshasagi, 17 minus a fifth is enough. So that's what we mean, that he wasn't so, he wasn't precise. But here it's a chumr. Here he said he needed an amma and a fifth more than you actually do need. So it was leidak and it was l'chumr leidak. Okay, but it comes out that Rabbi Yochanan is requiring in a circle sukkah, you need to be able to fit in a square that's an amma, that's 4 amas by 4 amas, like Rebbe's shita. What's interesting is that I didn't see anybody talk about this, but we have a ganze shakvatari here on Rabbi Yochanan who is going like Rebbe when we pass him like Beishamai that all you need is a 7 by 7. But it could be in theory that maybe the yisoid that you have to be able to fit a square of 7 by 7, not the. I don't know if this is true. I'm wondering if the reason why the Gemara went through the whole shakvatari, if it's not Lagei Lamaisa. It could be you just wanted to explain what Rabbi Yochanan, what he said. Possibly it's because even in a 7 by 7, you don't need an area of 49 square tvachim. Maybe you actually need a square. And if the Gemara went to the Shakvatari, explain to you how you figure out that out. Maybe. What?
2 floors of the
You can't. We're going to get to that. We're going to talk about 2 floors on Daf Tesamid base. That's tomorrow, Mitzvah show. Okay. Says the Gemara, right. The Gemara has another option here. So, Rabbanan de Kesari. So the Rabbanan in Kesari, for Amri Dayani de Kesari, Amri, they said as follows. Igu, the first thing that they said is the same as what we have said until now, and the second thing they said is different. So Amri Igu de Nafik Migav Ribuya Riva. So a circle that is inside a square, so that the square is going to be a quarter larger. Okay. But Ribua de Nafik Migav Igula, but when you have a square inside the circle, so we said that it's a third larger. Says the Rabbanan de Kesari that it's palga. It's going to be half the size of this. You have to add on half the size of the square. Right. Take a look at Rashi on top. Avribuya migavi gula palga kisha'ata mirabeya b'toicha igul. When you make your square inside the circle, atamoitzi mimenu chatzi hashir hanishar bay dahainu tilsa the kule, which is it's a third. You'll add on a third of the size of the square. Hilkach l'sheishes ribua tzarachi igul makif esav li'es eser va'arba. So what we want to do is use this logic or what the Rabbanan of the Kesari held would work according to Rabbi Yochanan, because they're saying that in order to fit your square inside the circle, so you would actually need You have to take half the size of the square, and meaning if you add a third to the size of the square, and that's how big your circumference is going to be. So if your circumference of the circle now is 16, so right, that would be if you have a 4x4. If you have a square that's 4x4, so then we said the circumference is 16, right? The circumference of that would be 18.
Circle 18 and perimeter for 16.
Right. This shita is that if you have a square that's 16, you would need a circle that is 24 amas to circle it. That's what they said. If that was true, then that would work out according to Rabbi Yochanan. The problem is v'lohi. It's not true. You see that it's not this much. Okay. It doesn't work. Correct. That's what the Gemara says. What the havamina here of the Rabbana Kesari is, I remember seeing once. I couldn't find it this time. How did that work? But that is what the Gemara said. But according to them, Rabbi Yochanan would have made sense. So if Rabbi Yochanan held like them, so then it would work. The problem is that it doesn't work mathematically. Now it's interesting how Rashi, just the way Rashi figured all these things out is that he did it with string. He says if you take string and you make a square or circle, right, and then you take that same string and you make a square, you'll need, that's how Rashi goes through it all with strings. Okay, that's the end of Rabbi Yochanan's round sukkah of 24 amas, or 24 people. Okay. Now the Gemara we have two more chidushim before two more types of sukkahs that we're going to discuss now. They're called sukkahs ganbach and sukkahs rak bash. So let's see them. Says the Gemara. Reb Levi Mishum Reb Meir. Before that. We have one thing before that. Shtei sukkahs shel Yisrael. If you have two sukkahs of the Yisrael were potters. Okay, so the potters, they would go from town to town. They'd set up shop. They put up a little tent, and they would live on the inside tent, and that's where they would sleep. And the outside, their other tent that was outside, that is where they would make their pots, and that's where they would sell them. Okay, they had two sukkahs. Shtei sukkah shel Yitzru. Zu lefnimi zu, one inside the next. Hapenimi is ein a sukkah. The inside one is not a kosher sukkah. The chayav is b'mezuzah, and it requires a mezuzah. The chitzayna sukkah, the outer one, can be considered a sukkah. Upetura min a sukkah, and a mezuzah, and it's exempt from mezuzah. Now, before we discuss the mezuzah, why should the inner one? Apparently, both of these sukkahs, they had schach on them. They didn't have. They were real huts, and they had the roof was kosher schach. So why should it be that the guy can't use this sukkah or this little hut that he's sleeping? Why can't, when sukkah comes, can't it be a kosher sukkah? What's the problem? So take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Panimius ain't a sukkah." He says, if you want to sleep in this sukkah, for sukkahs, we'll see on Daf Tes that you don't have to build a sukkah l'shem sukkahs. You just need to build it l'shem tzel. The machshir sukkah yeshana, you can, an old sukkah is fine. You don't need a sukkah built for yantiv. Listen to what Rashi says. Hacha ain't a sukkah. It's not a sukkah. The loiminkar a milsa the l'shem sukkah hu darbai the kol yemais hashana dayer hasam. It doesn't look like a sukkah because he sleeps there all year, and since he sleeps there all year, he does all of it. He eats there, he sleeps there. That's where he does what he needs to do. That is not a sukkah. So machlokes in the Rishonim, if this is a din da'uraisa, that's Rashi saying, or a din da'rabbanan. But in any event, if you have a hut that you live in, you cannot use it as a sukkah. The reason why the chitzayna is kosher, in their mamish the same thing. These sukkahs, they're identical. They're just it's a hut that you use an inner part of the hut for where you live, and the outer part of the hut is where where you sell your stuff. He says because when you move your bed into the outer part of your hut, that is minkra. Now this is clear that it's a sukkah because that's not where you normally sleep and eat. So that's the sukkah's yotzer. Now, why is the outside one putter from a sukkah? The outside one should be like an entrance way to your inner one. And the din is that a base shar, an entrance, is also chayiv in mezuzah. So why wouldn't the outer sukkah be chayiv because it's a base shar? It's an entrance. Says the Gemara, mishum delay kviya. Because it's not kviyas. Rashi says that neither of these are chashav enough. Rashi says this inner hut is not chashav enough to have an entrance. A base shar is an entrance to your home, to a place that has a kviyas. Meaning both of even the place where this guy slept, this wasn't his house. This was when he would travel, so he needed to sleep somewhere, so he set up shop there. But that's not a chashav. That's not considered a makam chashav. That it was meaning to have an entrance. It needs to be an entrance of something that's chashav. So you can't have an entrance to your tent, or if you do, it's not chayiv and mezuzah. Okay, now we get to sukkahs ganbach and sukkahs rakbash. Here we go. Tanabana ganbach. The Brisa says ganbach. What does ganbach stand for? So the Brisa actually tells us. That's helpful. Sukkahs goyim, a sukkah that was made by goyim or made for goyim. Sukkahs nashim, a sukkah that was made for women or by women. Sukkahs behema, a sukkah that was made for animals or by animals. Sukkahs kusim, sukkahs that were made by a kusim. Okay, well, who were kusim? So kusim were a group of people that the Melech Ashur at one point in history brought people from different countries and put them into the Shomron. And yes, and there were lions that started attacking them, and they figured, if we become Jewish, then they won't attack us anymore. So that's what they did. They converted. And there was a machlekes from then, whether they were considered Gerei Emes or Gerei Arayas. Did they just convert because they were scared and they never meant it, or were they actually true Gerei? Vinishvi, whatever you hold, at some point in the Gemara, in the times of the Marayim, they were geyser. They made a decree that the Kusim are not considered Jews. They're considered Nachar. Okay, that's the Kusim. In any event, these four sukkahs are all considered, they're all kosher. And the Gemara says, a sukkah mikomak, or any type of a sukkah, keshera. Ubelvad, what's the Tanai? Sheteh misuchachas kehelchasa. It needs to have schach kehalacha. Well, what do you mean kehelchasa? Obviously, it has to have give enough shade. That was a Mishnah. My kehelchasa. Rav Chizda v'usha sa'al itzel. It needs to be made for shade, as opposed to what? Well, it doesn't need to be made l'shem chag because we pass like this. But it needs to be made for shade purposes as opposed to sneas. If it's put up for privacy, that will not be good. That is not considered a sukkah. Sukkah needs to be put up for shade.
What about for rain?
Protection. Probably. Probably, I think so. You know, it says Nechayra. If I don't know, it's a good kasha. Rashi says that it needs to be sukkah, the mikri sukkah sheseicheches min hachayrev, that it covers you from chayrev is from heat, really, from the sun. So I'm not sure about the rain. It's a good question. Okay. Now what is the Brisa has had four cases plus a sukkah mikomake. What did it mean by any type of a sukkah? Sukkah mikomake la'asuye. What's that coming to include? La'asuye sukkas rakbash. Right, we'll see what that is momentarily. The Tanur Rabbanim, we have a Brisa that says Sukkah's Rakbash. The Brisa spells it out. Sukkah's Rayim, that's the Sukkah of shepherds. Sukkah's Kayatzim, the Sukkah of fig watchers. They would watch to make sure, or the cutters. Sukkah's Burganin. This Burganin were people who watched were Shemrei Ha'ir, and Sukkah Shemrei Paris, the Sukkah of people who were watching the fruit. Sukkah Mikamak, or any type of Sukkah, Kasher Bavachtem Schachas Kelchaza, as long as it has Schach Kelchaza, Mike Kelchaza, Amr Chizda, Vushasal Letzel, Sukkah, Vushasal Letzel needs to be made for shade. Sukkah Mikamak Amasuyemai. Why are you telling me what's that going to include any type of a Sukkah? It's Lasuye Sukkah's Ganbach. Okay, so we have two brises. Each one is spelling out one set and telling you that there's another type of set that's also going to be kosher. So Gemara wants to know why, like, what's the machlekes in these two brises? Why does it seem that to one that one group is more pashat than the other group? So it says the Gemara, Hai Tana de Ganbach, Alima le Ganbach. He liked those sukkahs better, mishum de kvi, because they're kviistic. They have a kviis to them. And that's why he was more likely to.
Meaning permanency or what?
It was easier to be machshir them. Chashuva lachshir is they're more permanent. They have more of a permanence as opposed to the other ones, which were just used for the.
We don't want permanency.
Yeah, but the one, if you take, for example, the Reish, the one for the shepherds, the flock moves from place to place, so the shepherds are going to pick it up and go with them, so it doesn't really have, it's not a real sukkah. It doesn't have any kvias.
Right, it's even less than regular.
Right.
So that he would call a sukkah mikol makom. Alimle like amach, that was easier to be machshir those mishum the kavi. V'katana mikol makom asuye ragbash. The light kavi, which have very little permanence. The high town of the Rakbash is the opposite. Rakbash, the Bnei Chiyuv. At least those people are people that are chayiv in sukkah. So that's why if they put it up, they would be more easily to be machshir. To include the sukkahs gambach, the lav Bnei Chiyuv. Those are all built by people that were not Bnei Chiyuv. And he's saying, and even that is going to be kosher as well. Now I just wanted to. I remember I learned this Gemara in 11th grade for Rabbi Kalish, and I remember asking him, what would be if you make a sukkah, if a guy would make a sukkah between two buildings? If a guy, let's say you have an apartment building, and you have a guy putting up the schach for you, right? So now when you're in the apartment, now there's no sale. It's not necessary for shade, right? So what would be the halacha in such an instance? If a guy put up a sukkah in between two buildings, if you put up the schach, so where l'chera is not putting up for shade.
That's we had that in where we look as if the building's out there.
That's it. That means the sukkah would be kosher. But that's good. But you have to put up the sukkah for shade purposes. So here the guy's not putting up for shade because the schach is not adding any shade.
Why is he putting it up?
Because you told him to.
That's right.
Okay. That's it.